is light of any lamp.
Welcome, all you beautiful souls, the light of any lamp, to my little corner of the internet. Today's hot take: people are not nearly as stubborn and obstinate as you think they are, and neither are you. Hot take number 2, talking is hard. And this is where we're going to start. So, even something fairly simple, your favorite shirt, your favorite food, your favorite movie, trying to express why that is in something that should be fairly intuitive can be difficult enough. Trying to take something more complicated, philosophically or socially nuanced and complex, you have to first figure out what you think, then get all that straight in your own head, and then perhaps the most difficult step, which I'm struggling with right now, is getting things in your head out of your mouth in a coherent, concise, and hopefully eloquent manner. And that is hard. They are definitely different skill sets, and you could be really good at one and not so good at the other. So, if you've been in a conversation where you felt frustrated at the end, which I'm going to assume is pretty much everybody, it can often feel like the other person's being purposefully obstinate or stubborn. You can hear very often, there's just no common sense these days, people are so stupid or dumb, got their fingers in the ears, they just don't want to hear different thoughts, they don't want to be shown why they're wrong, they don't want to listen, they don't want to talk, right? And that could be what's going on. Any of the frustrating conversations that you have had or are bound to have in the future, they could be that. You could be brilliant, and they could be dumb, and that's how things could play out. Another option on what could have happened is that you could be just as right as you think you are, but not nearly as eloquent or articulate as you perhaps could be. And so your very good point that you were trying to make is lost in the fact that it's very difficult to express ideas, as again, I am currently realizing. One of the other options is that you're the obstinate one, and the other person is struggling with you right now. Obviously not you, somebody else, but still it's one of the options on the table. So if nothing else, for the time being, I'd like to take away from this that if someone seems to be struggling, especially if it's an emotional topic, I'm hoping to grab for 2 things here. One is just for a little patience, a little empathy, a little forgiveness and grace to the person who you're speaking with, who is trying to convey ideas that may be very important to them, and understand that it's very difficult to do that. The second aspect to this, which might be more important for some of you than others, is have a little patience and empathy with yourself, for the exact same reasons, which may be the more or less important point depending who I'm talking to. So at this point, I'm going to talk about Dan and Jeff. We all should know a Dan and a Jeff. So Dan, you have conversations with. He listens very attentively, keeps eye contact, waits for pauses, doesn't interrupt you. Great conversation. At the end of this, after you've made all your wonderful points, Dan believes you are definitely wrong. He doesn't agree with a thing that you said. He still thinks you're wrong about everything. But Dan actually listened and understood, and when Dan's talking to Carly later, he'll be able to express what you said very well, and to your satisfaction if you were there. And not only will he be able to do this, he'll be quite willing to do this, and happy to explain a very good rendition of what it is you believe. And you'd have been very proud of Dan, had you been there. Jeff, on the other hand, not so much. So you and Jeff might line up well on a multi-choice survey, but overall the conversation felt a lot different. Jeff was on his phone, Jeff wasn't paying attention, Jeff would interrupt you. Jeff didn't seem to be responding to things that you said at all, and often it really just felt like Jeff was waiting for you to stop talking so he could insert his own 2 cents. Now, Jeff is a big fan of you and actually agrees, and thinks you're quite smart if for no other reason that you've come to the same brilliant conclusions that he has, and therefore you must be right about things. My core question at this point is, if you're going to have a third conversation, who would you rather have a conversation with? Who would you rather have a follow-up discussion about anything, simple or deep, for that matter, straightforward or complex? And if you, like everyone else I've ever been able to ask in person, pretty quickly goes to Dan, I want to point out that what's frustrating is not being disagreed with, or somebody thinking you're wrong. It's actually not being heard. That my own experience personally, as well as my own experience observationally, is that's actually usually what frustrates people, and what makes people not like arguments, is that aspect of it, not the thinking you're wrong or the disagreement part. And I think that's worth taking some time to sit with. Literally, maybe pause the video and sit with it for a second. Now, as we continue throughout our day to think about Dan and Jeff, and certainly we all should, there's two things that are almost overlapping and concurrent points, but I think distinct enough that it matters, that I'd like to take away from this. One is almost a tactical aspect that you could look to understanding, sympathy, forgiveness, and grace in conversation, basically being a good listener, as a garnish to conversation. And at minimum, it should be that a conversation would be better if that's included. Past that, we could look at these facets like a prerequisite to good conversation. That this is something that if you're going to call something a good conversation, if you're going to get to a point where you have a good conversation, these need to be here. Even beyond that, though, is the idea that this isn't just a prerequisite, this is essential, this is a core, this is the good in the term good conversation. If this is absent, it is not a good conversation. If you're having a debate, and both of you don't well understand and willingly be able to summarize the other person's stance, you have not had a good conversation. You have not had a dialogue. You have not come to any conclusions because you haven't got far enough to do that if you're having and trying to figure something out with your spouse or significant other. That solving problems is not something that happens after you listen to each other. It's actually a necessary core facet of that. If you're just listening to and trying to help out a buddy or fellow budette because they are going through it right now, I'm not sure we should even be thinking about active listening and understanding as something that needs to happen before you can help them out, as opposed to actually helping them out. And to the degree this is true, to tie this to the beginning, think about how different a conversation would be with someone where you're trying to talk about something that's really important to you, and rather than hopping on every error, or just waiting till you're done speaking to explain why you're wrong, they actually try to help out your points, phrase back what you're saying to you even better than you said it to them, and really help you articulate what's in your head more eloquently than you even were able to. How much different that conversation would feel. And to tie this to the obstinate point at the beginning, how much different that is on whether they agree with you or not. I don't think they're that tied. So I'd like to leave you with two quotes, because the first one's short, so I can sneak two in here for your rumination. Consultation, frank and unfettered, is the bedrock of this unique order. Shoghi Effendi. The second principle of consultation is that of detachment. The members of an assembly must learn to express their views frankly, calmly, without passion or rancor. They must also learn to listen to the opinions of their fellow members without taking offense or belittling the views of another. Baha'i consultation is not an easy process. It requires love, kindliness, moral courage, and humility. Thus, no member should ever allow himself to be prevented from expressing frankly his views because it may offend a fellow member, and, realizing this, no member should take offense at another member's statements. Letter taken from the Universal House of Justice of the Baha'i Faith. I'll leave you with that. We'll talk again soon, and we'll see how this goes.